and get right into the bucket system. So if you are following along with me, what you could do is get to the cheat sheet and come to the bucket system portion of it. Put a filter on there that says the bucket system, and that's how you can follow along with me. Because what I like to do is put a filter and just go stat by stat. We have 6 stats when it comes to the bucket system. We're looking at finishes last year. So golfers that had, well, we're just looking at finishing places from the 2022 PGA Championship, last year's PGA Championship. Then we're looking at finishes from last week. Now, both of these 2 buckets include golfers who did not play either last year or last week. Last week was the 18T Byron Nelson. There were other events. I do not include those. I'm just including PGA Tour events, and that's it. I frankly don't care about live golf. Like, there are some interesting points, and I would have to put enough data together to see if any of those things come to fruition. You know, like playing a live golf event prior to a PGA Tour event, does it show any success? Obviously, there hasn't been a lot of time to figure that out, so I don't include it. Like I analyze these patterns. When there's only one instance to look at, that's not a pattern. So I don't look at live golf. I also don't look at the Euro Tour because we don't have a lot of Euro Tour golfers that come over here that had played the week before. You know, you had Sung J.M. that played the week before, but in Korea. I'm not going to look at that. I don't care. Like, if he does well, awesome. But I'm not going to use his win from the week before in Korea or in South Korea to be anything of substance. So we're looking at last year's stats, last week's stats. Does playing last week matter? And if so, what finish shows up inside the top 10 more often than not? Tournament history, recent form. This looks back at your last 7 weeks. Then I'm looking at salaries, which we kind of did during the past optimal and GPP lineups. This will just further validate which golfers we want to choose or select, you know, which salaries we want to select from. And then we also have strokes gain stats. So I do strokes gain a little different. I highly encourage you to go check out the video in the description, or click that link that goes to the Bucket System Explained video. Listen to what I speak about strokes gain stats. It's different. I'm really just looking at off the tee in putting. Off the tee dictates approach. But because off the tee comes first, I don't really look at approach that much. Approach is baked into these stats, but again, you're going to have to go watch that video to understand. If I explain it here, it'll be 30 minutes longer than what it needs to be. So go watch that video to understand it. But let's go ahead and let's put that filter on and just clear everything out and select last year. Does playing the PGA Championship last year or the year before matter for the current year or the year that we're looking at? So how about having a top 20 finish? Does that matter? Well, there's a 19% success rate. It's pretty good. Now, one way to look at this, by the way, consider this like a team. Last year, one bucket is a team. It's looking at all golfers dating back to 2013. And we're looking at all golfers who finished top 20 the year before. We're looking at top 10 golfers the year of. So basically, we're trying to predict who's going to be inside the top 10. So here in 2023, we're looking at 2022 stats. In 2022, we were looking at 2021 stats. And just so you're aware, I keep all this information. This is the engine. This is the count that we're looking at. You know, top 10 finishes. We're comparing how many show up inside the top 10. These are all top 10 finishers, like the numbers that are represented here. We're comparing this to basically how many of those golfers were in those buckets. And that's how we come up with a percentage over here for success percentage. That carries over to my summary page, essentially. So 19.34%. It's a pretty high success rate. So of all golfers that have ever been in this bucket, we have almost a 20% flip rate of finding a golfer inside the top 10 the following year that they top 20'd at the PGA Championship. So we have 21 golfers in that bucket this year. Where on average, we see around 20. And if we use 20%, just if we want to do it this way, we use 20%, we multiply it into 21, we get 2. The projection says we want somewhere between 1 to 4. Remember, we're rounding up with our max projection. We're rounding down with our min projection. So 1 to 4, well, 2 is right in the middle. So I can either say select 2 or give you a range. I think there will be somewhere between 1 to 4 golfers inside the top 10 that had a top 20 finish the year before. So we see it every single year. And mind you, by the way, there's a 100% frequency rate, meaning every single year we've had a golfer inside the top 10 who had top 20 the year before. And then also another point to that is we've seen at least 2 every single year. It's not at least 1, it's at least 2. Now, when it comes to the optimal lineup, we've seen at least 1 in the optimal lineup every single year from this bucket. So that's telling you right away, this is a very important bucket to select your golfers from. Now, some of you might just be like, wow, top 20 finish the year before is probably going to be a good golfer. You're most likely right. Let's go ahead and take a look at who our golfers are from the last year bucket. The last year bucket 1. If you want to follow along with me, go ahead, drill down on the little filter icon, go to DraftKings. We are going to look at the last year 1 bucket. So you want to go to the last year column, click in the little filter, clear everything out, and go to last year 1. Well, looky here. We actually, by the way, if you saw earlier, there were 5 10K golfers, but in this bucket, there's only 1. It's Rory McIlroy. So of all the 10K golfers, is that true? I want to make sure. So of all the 10K golfers, yeah, here we go. Here's all our 10K golfers, and look at their finishes from last year. Rory's the only guy that finished inside the top 20. So there's already a lot of conversation about Rory McIlroy. This golf course being a really good fit for him. Now I'm just also proving to you he's in a bucket that we're projecting somewhere between 1 to 4 golfers to finish inside the top 10. Now, I wish I had my combinations that go with the buckets, like the bucket combinations, because maybe it would tell us that a 10K golfer with a top 20 finish the year before is like 100%, frequency rate. If that was the case, I would say hammer Rory all day, every day for this PGA Championship. Like, he's the guy you want to anchor your lineups around. If you already have that conviction, I am just providing more fuel to your argument, to your feelings of validation. I think Rory's a wonderful play. Then we've got Xander, JT, your defending champ, Cam Smith, your live tour golfer, Cam Young, another popular choice this week, Max Homa, Tyrrell Hatton, lots of good names, by the way. So again, 1 to 4 is the projection. Can that projection, can there be more golfers to finish inside the top 10? Yes. We just saw that with the AT&T Byron Nelson. But when it comes to the optimal lineup, no. I think that projection's pretty good. 1 to 4, yeah, I don't know, it's kind of silly, but because it's a pretty large range, I think you want 2. If I'm being honest, because the salaries you see in front of you aren't super hard to build lineups around. So finding 2 golfers, I think, is imperative from this bucket to build your lineups around. And again, you can find 2 to 4 or 1 to 4. And if you want to put more into your lineup, go for it. The world's your oyster, man or lady. Like, you can do whatever you want. It's just hitting the optimals. That's not the way. It is not the way. So, anyways, 1 to 4 is what I'm projecting to be inside the top 10. Realistically, I think you just want to anchor your lineups around 2, maybe 3. Remember, not every year has there been 2 or more in the optimal lineup. But I guess if we wanted to dig a little further, let's go look at the buckets. Scroll all the way down to our optimal lineups. So this is the bucket we're looking at. This is our optimal lineups every single year. So we've seen 1 three times, but we've seen 2 or more 3 times as well. So it's a 50% chance to have 2 or more in your optimal lineup. And really, when we're looking at 6 years, 2 out of the 6 years had 3 or more, there's a 33% chance we'll have at least 3 golfers. That's kind of how I look at it. And especially when we look at the bucket, or the golfers inside this bucket, yeah, there's several good golfers. Now, there's one thing you have to think about is salary construction. Can we put 3 of these 9K golfers, or 2 9Ks and an 8K golfer together, or even a 10-9-8? We certainly can. You certainly can. And Rory is a pretty forgiving price tag. Honestly, when it comes to building lineups, 10-7 is pretty easy to build around. So you could go, like Rory and even Xander at 9-9. That is expensive, but not super expensive, especially if like Fleetwood was your guy. You're using $28,600. That leaves you with about, $21,400. That's a $7,000 like average out to be like $7,000. You could put 2 7K golfers together and a 6K golfer pretty darn easy to follow that 10-9-8-7-7-6 method, and start lineups like this. Like this looks like a pretty good lineup. So keep all that in mind. This is definitely the first bucket I would look at, and I'm sure this is what we're going to look at with the anchor buckets, is the last year ones. Looking at the other ones, basically any other finish between 20th place to a missed cut. Each of the buckets in between are 0 to 2. There's no frequency that you want at least 1, except for when it comes to a missed cut. But our projection is actually 0 to 2, so it's kind of showing that, well, there you go. You can see it right here. We actually have about 10 less golfers this year than we do on average. Pretty decent strength of field points that go into it, but a very low success rate. Again, it's looking at all golfers who missed the cut the year before. This includes your PGA members, the guys that qualified to get here, but these are also the guys that aren't good enough to be on tour. So maybe they find their moment in the sun. Maybe they find themselves in contention, but most likely it's not going to happen. That is bringing this bucket, the success rate down pretty hard. But again, we have less than we normally do. So this frequency of 100% could be challenged this year and not work out. Plus, that's a pretty low frequency rate when it comes to how many years we see a golfer in the optimal lineup from the bucket. Not very good. I don't really want to talk about the rest of these buckets because you can do this on the cheat sheet if you truly wanted to. That first bucket was definitely something I wanted you guys to look at. But basically what you do if you're coming to the cheat sheet and you're seeing those projections, by the way, let me just pull up the cheat sheet so you can do this. I'll show you can do it yourself. You can go ahead and put that filter on the bucket system. I'm currently in the course history, but you could go to last year and, clear everything and then select last year. And you're going to see the same projections that I have. So then you can go to the dream sheet just like I was doing, put a filter on there, which is there already is one, and go to, whatever bucket you want to look at. So if you want to look at last year 2s, you can see it starts with Tony Finau, Joaquin Niemann. You see a bunch of names there, probably sort by salaries. Spieth is in this bucket. Spieth, Finau, and then when you go back to the bucket system, you're like, okay, this was last year 2s. I'm looking at last year 2s. The projection's 0 to 2. That's not super great. 80, like a 90% frequency rate. That's pretty good. Pretty good frequency rate of being the optimal lineup. Pretty decent. Top 5 frequencies, not super great, but this is taking into account all golfers that were in that bucket. So not terrible, I should say, because 9.94 is the highest. 8.57 is just below it. Not terrible. Have a pretty decent top 20 frequency. Not terrible. Like you can see all the cut, even cut made percentages and stuff like that. So it's not a terrible bucket to choose a golfer from. But just remember that your projection is 0 to 2 to be inside the top 10. That's not to say, select 0 to 2, but you could hear it that way. I hear it that way when I say I'm projecting 0 to 2. Just be cognizant that you can't always put, either the max number of the projection or maybe even sometimes the middle. You can only do one. But, we're looking at last year 2s. You can see Spieth. You can see a lot of good names that you want to build lineups with. Here's the fun part about the bucket system. I'm giving you a max of 2. Because even if I think you have the ability to have more than 2, I just think 2 is going to be the max you're going to see in the optimal lineup from any of these guys. So if you're going to try to get fancy and like play Spieth with Lowry and then maybe Patrick Reed, probably not the way to go. Literally not the way to go. You could win a league matchup, certainly, but I don't think you're going to take down a GPP, and you're not going to hit the optimal lineup. So again, I'm not going to go through each of the buckets. I just wanted to go over that one that was very prominent. So if you wanted to look at last year 2s through last year 5, or actually even last year 6s, check out the cheat sheet, look at each of the golfers there, and then just understand how the projections work. Always round down with your minimums, always round up with your maximums, and this is projecting to be inside the top 10. So we move on to the next bucket, which is your last week bucket. So does it matter playing the week before? It appears it does not. Although having a top 20 finish the week before nets you 100% frequency rate of having at least one goal. I shouldn't say it that way. I kind of say it like as a golfer, but this is a bucket. A bucket contains all the golfers in it. So if all the golfers in it for all the past years dating back to 2013, that's where my stats come from. So of all the years this bucket has been in use, we have seen 100% frequency rate of having at least one golfer from the last week 1 bucket to be inside the top 10. We have 7 golfers in that bucket this year, where we usually see about 20. So the chances of having one in the optimal lineup's not super good, or even inside the top 10. Like this minimum by the end of this year might switch to 0. By the end of this tournament might switch to 0. However, we can go ahead and take a look. Here, how about this? Let's see if we can make our feelings feel a little bit better. What I like to do is come here. Basically, I want to hide all of this to look at our last year columns. So we'll hide that because I want to look at these top 10s because all these years are on top of each other. So just remember, this is our last week bucket, and this is our last week totals. So where we see 1, what's our number? How many total were there? So in 2021, there were 8 golfers in that bucket, and 1 showed up inside the top 10. Because again, this is the top 10 table. So we can also look at other years where there were like, less than double digits. So we had 2019 where there were 8, 2016 where there were 9. Well, in 2019, we had 2 that were inside the top 10. In 2016, we also had 2 that were inside the top 10. So even though we have a limited amount of golfers, or a smaller number of golfers, still a pretty good success rate of golfers from that bucket finishing inside the top 10. One other thing to note would be your optimal lineups, right? So now we're looking at this column right here, this row, I should say. And when we had 8 in 2021, we had 0 in the optimal lineup. However, when we had 8 in 2019, we had 2 in the optimal lineup. Unfortunately, we didn't have salaries in 2016 to come up with optimal lineups, so it didn't work. We can't figure that one out. So I think you're on one of two sides. You're like, well, 7 isn't that far away from 8 and 9. Every single year we've seen 1 inside the top 10, even with that low of totals. So again, we're looking at this column here to go, well, if I were to, I can't do it. But if you were to think like you just right down here. So we have 9 and 2, 8 and 2, 8 and 1. We have 7. We're going to get 1. So let's take a look at that bucket. It's a very intriguing bucket. So if you have any filters on your cheat sheet, make sure you go in and select everything. You want to make sure there are no filters when you go and try to filter down to whatever you're trying to look at. Like what we're trying to do here is last week 1s. Scotty Scheffler, Jason Day, Tyrrell Hatton, Adam Scott, Siwoo Kim, Seamus Power, Mackenzie Hughes. So now that we just broke it down, I don't see how you can do more than 2. I really don't. If you try to put 2 or more of these golfers in your lineup, I don't think you get close to the optimal lineup. I do think, though, 2 is not a terrible number to select because you obviously get Scotty Scheffler. You get a reasonably priced Jason Day, who just won the AT&T Byron Nelson. You also get Tyrrell Hatton, who is a part of the optimal lineup during the AT&T Byron Nelson. So you have 2 optimal lineup guys. Adam Scott was really close to being the optimal lineup, finished 8th last week. Siwoo Kim's a great player at $7,100. Pretty easy to fit him in your lineups. Seamus Power and Mac Hughes. So I was telling you also, Mac Hughes has won on tour. And I say that because he's in the 6K range. Seamus Power has also won on tour. All these guys have won on tour. So Mac Hughes might be a pretty decent 6K play. Or perhaps you don't play Mac Hughes at all and you play a different 6K golfer who is not, you just play a different 6K golfer because you'd rather play one of these guys up here. So I think your choice is, well, first of all, do you play any golfer from this bucket? Are you comfortable doing that? I don't know if I am, except for like Scotty. The rest of these guys are glue pieces. I don't feel comfortable anchoring around any of these golfers. I do like Adam Scott once again. He's in the 6K range or the 7K range. I do like Adam Scott. So he'll probably be in a bunch of my lineups. I think the guy's playing solid golf. You know, and I think someone like him, once he figures it out, it stays with him. It's not like I don't think he's a really streaky golfer. It's just there's been times where he's tried to change things, you know, especially when it comes to putting. But he's been a pretty decent putter as of late. So I don't mind someone like Adam Scott, especially his game, hits the ball high enough, plays the right kind of golf for this golf course. So I do like Adam Scott. And I'm not going to disregard Siwoo Kim. So I think all this tells me is I'm not anchoring around Scotty Scheffler. I'm playing these guys. I'm just playing these guys percentage-wise. So super interesting, right? I find that fascinating. I'm glad to go through that, to think of that. The rest of the buckets, once again, I'm going to leave up to you. 0 to 2. Remember, so this is when I did not say this during the last year buckets. There needs to be a 2-point gap between your minimum and maximum at all times. And you, because you can't go into the negative for a projection, it'll always be 0. That means the max, so if the min is 0, the max will always be 2, unless the max is actually greater than 2, which really never, ever happens. But keep that in mind. If your min is 0, your max will automatically be 2. Automatically. You want a 2-point buffer between the two. Something I just learned doing this years and years and years. You can't be too precise when it comes to your projections. You just want that 2-point buffer because, hey, it's golf. Any little small thing can happen. You know, someone might hit a pebble on a green, or not even a pebble. Let's say a ball mark on a green, because we've seen that a couple times, and it, you know, shoots your ball in a different direction or just barely makes you miss a hole. That one stroke is the difference between, you know, a golfer in a different bucket being in the optimal lineup versus, you know, one of the other golfers that you're like, no, I can't, or one of the other buckets that might have a second golfer in it now where you were only thinking it's going to be 1. So little small things like that can happen to change. So why not account for it? Let's just have a 2-point buffer. The major bucket is your last week's 6s. So how this reads is 4 to 7. That's what's being projected to be inside the top 10. You don't have this on your sheet, but this max projection just gives me kind of an idea. Like, okay, let's take the sweet spot scores into account. Now that it's a little bit closer to each other, what is our new max projection? So I call this my conservative max projection. You still round up, so this goes up to 6. You still want at least a 2-point buffer between the two. So your max is 6, your minimum will always be 4. That also kind of coincides with what the minimum already is. But one thing I've also learned, when your max is 6, you want your min to be 3. I know, I'm just making it up on the fly. But whenever I have my max at 6, I always have my min at 3. And that's what I'll probably be doing on the optimizer. So when you look at last week's sixes, we have 4 of our 10K golfers in there. You have 9 of your 9K golfers in that bucket. You have 7 of the 11 8K golfers in it, and then it's just a slew of 7 and 6K golfers. So very well could have 7 golfers from this bucket inside the top 10. I mean, it just looks super easy to get there. So this is probably the bucket, you know, minus the last year 1 bucket. Or I mean, not last year 1, last week 1 bucket. If you're trying to determine if you want at least 1, maybe 2, you're basically taking away a spot from this bucket. Because this bucket could actually, you could build a lineup of 6 golfers from this bucket, and it would be just fine. But remember, there's been 1 golfer from that other bucket, the last week 1 bucket, 1 every single year to be inside the top 10. Just remember that. Now, not every year has 1 been in the optimal lineup, but 1 has been inside the top 10, and that gives you a pretty good chance to hit the optimal with that golfer. So you can go 1 there, and maybe 5 from this bucket, maybe 4 from this bucket, and 1 from another one. Up to you. Just keep in mind the bucket totals from each of those buckets, the success rates. You can even do your simple math this way to make yourself feel comfortable. Look at the projections, whatever you want to do. All available to you on the cheat sheet. All right, let's move on to basically tournament history, but I have it. Oh, I do have it as tournament history. I was gonna say I probably have it as course history. The tournament history does look at the course history portion of the cheat sheet. So you're gonna see course history. This should actually say tournament history. You can change it on your end if you want. I'll just keep it as is. It's really looking at this, and whatever the ranges are in here, that is what bucket they are put into. So when it comes to this one, having the best tournament history, is it a good thing? Well, there's a 20% success rate. So yes, I would say so. We do have 7 golfers in that, or in the bucket this year, where we normally see around 8. So yeah, it's pretty darn close to what we normally see every single year. Not 100% frequency rate of having at least 1 inside the top 10, and definitely not 100% frequency rate of having 1 in the optimal lineup. So this is your best course history. Has a high success rate. Let's go check to see who those golfers are. So again, if you're following along with me on the cheat sheet, just select everyone from all the other filters that you might have on, and we're just going to look at course history 1, which is technically tournament history 1. Look at who's on the top. Brooks Koepka. Super interesting. The projection for this bucket is 0 to 2. It's not 100% frequency rate, but I have a feeling like someone like Brooks Koepka is most likely going to be a golfer that's going to break that mold. So I find this a very intriguing bucket, just because Brooks is at the top of it. There's not a lot of strength of field points going towards it, but that has a lot to do with live. These golfers being in live, and the OWGR points not being super high. Same with the FedEx Cup, because they were obviously kicked out last year. They're not going to have a lot of FedEx Cup points. So not a lot of strength of field points go towards this bucket, and that's kind of why it hurts the projections a little bit. But you have powerhouses like Koepka and Young. You also have last week's winner and Jason Day. Abe Answer has played this tournament pretty darn well. I think he has like 3 years, maybe 4 years of experience, and an average finishing spot of 19. It's pretty darn good. Davis Riley is here. I think him, Mito, and Seamus, they all have their 1 year of experience. You might be able just to cross them off. And if you do, just don't play them, period. You know, you're most likely looking at Koepka, Young, Day, and maybe Answer. And really, Cam Young only has 1 year of course history as well. But very talented golfer, so do with it as you will. I think that's a really interesting bucket. The next 2 buckets are kind of where your money like where you want to really focus some of your lineups around, because in the tournament history 2 bucket, we're looking at a minimum of 2 to 4. Now, I still look at my max projection over here. This is my conservative max projection. This would be 3, which automatically means this goes down to 1. Because this max is 3, my min goes to 1, but my max, my actual maximum stays at 4. So that bucket would be 1 to 4. And this other bucket's 1 to 3. So tournament history 2 bucket would again be 1 to 4. Tournament history 3 would be 1 to 3. And you can see the rest are 0 to 2. The rest of the buckets are 0 to 2. You can all do your analysis, your deductions based off of the success rates, how many golfers are in those buckets versus what we see on average per year, and try to figure out which golfers work best for you. But if we were just to look at the 2 buckets we were kind of talking about, course history 2, remember this is a 1 to 4 bucket, and it's perfect because you have 4 10K golfers that are here at the top. 2 of those guys could easily be inside the top 10. Easily. And if that's the case, that still, fulfills the projection, but you probably can't play both of them. Same kind of goes with your 9K golfers that are up here. Maybe it's difficult. Maybe we have Rahm and McIlroy inside the top 10 with, say, Tony Finau and Victor Hovland. So we have 4 golfers. That is what our max projection is. You can't play. It'd be really hard to play 3 of these guys together, let alone 2. I mean, you could do 2, but 3 is pushing it. Especially if you do Rahm at $11,400, $9,500 Tony Finau, $9,100 Victor Hovland, you're left. You're spending $30,000 on these 3 golfers. The salary cap is $50,000, so you only have $20,000 left. You divide that by 3, it's less than $7,000 for your remaining players. So you're most likely going to have to grab 2 6K golfers, and that's not going to be very successful for you, I don't think, for this week. So you want to think about the projections, what could realistically happen, and if those things do happen, then how likely is it that you can actually play golfers from that bucket? So keep all of that in mind when you're building lineups. That's all that I bring that up for, because those are things that I've caught myself doing in the past that screw my lineups. Like you can't build good lineups doing that. So you can't be super specific. You have to think about the projections, think about the likelihood of which golfers from a bucket, especially this one, are going to finish inside the top 10. My boy Adam Scott's down here. I really like Justin Rose and Ricky Fowler this week, but when you have these guys up here, it might be difficult. And oh, by the way, we could still have 5, 6, even 7 golfers finish inside the top 10 in this bucket, and you still can only play 3 or even 2 in your to be in the optimal lineup. That also could be a thing. So that would only be if like 6 of these guys here that are $9,000 and above finish inside the top 10 with like Adam Scott or Justin Rose or Ricky Fowler. So just keep that in mind. Remember that projection was 1 to 4. Now the other one we want to look at is tournament history 3, and that's 1 to 3. And that starts with Xander Schauffele, which is super interesting. I really like Schauffele this week. Him being in this bucket at the top by himself. Like, so now how my brain works, it's like, yeah, okay, this makes me kind of want to anchor around Schauffele. Well, what can I do with that last bucket I was looking at? The projection here is 1 to 4. So you start creating like scenarios in your head. I forget what it's really called, but so Schauffele's at $9,900. When I build a lineup, well, I kind of want to have Adam Scott in my lineup, and now I kind of want Ricky Fowler in my lineup. Now, are these 2 guys better than any of these guys up here? No, I don't think so. But if I'm trying to piece together a story where Xander's in the optimal lineup, and still you want, the projections 1 to 4 from this one, I probably want at least 1, maybe 2. Who do I pair Xander with? Do I go with Rory? See, I couldn't do Rory and Finau, although we were talking about Rory, Finau, in Xander, and that leaves us with like $7,000. So we could do that. Certainly could. Or maybe we go Xander, Finau, maybe Hovland Scott, or Hovland Rose, Hovland Fowler. Maybe we do that. We get those 3 guys to go with Xander. So now we have 3 9K golfers, and now we have 1 7K. That's pretty decent. Those are all, you know, scenarios that could happen. Now, I'm going to leave it to the bucket system to build my lineups. I used to build this way because that's just how my brain works. If you're already fatigued listening to that, I understand, because I got fatigued all the time trying to put all these like storylines together, essentially. But yeah, that's what you could do. Now, these are your 2 buckets you kind of want to focus at least finding 1 golfer from, not necessarily getting too cute and trying to find 2 or 3 golfers from. You know, build your lineups that make sense. You know, we obviously went through the tournament history 1 bucket, figured that one out. So figure out what 2 and 3 look like for you, and then maybe 4 through 6 you can consider. Just remember the projections are 0 to 2, very low success rate, not a high frequency rate to be inside the top 10 or in the optimal lineup. So be considerate of that, or cognizant of that. The next bucket to look at is our recent form buckets. So I'm looking at the last 7 weeks, and we're looking at average finishing position for the last 7 weeks. When you include this week, that's 8 total weeks. That's 2 months. I like to look at 2 months worth of data for my recent form, and you can see having good recent form are your top buckets for frequency rate, not so much success rate, but you can see it. 1 golfer from each of these buckets finishes inside the top 10 every single year. Not so much when it comes to the optimal lineup. Like, I would say our most successful bucket would be recent form 1, but there's only an 83% frequency rate of being the optimal lineup there. Whereas recent form 3 is actually one of our lower success rates for the top 3 buckets, but has a 100% frequency rate. That's mostly because you might have a 6K golfer or a 7K golfer, like a low 7K golfer from that bucket. That finishes, you know, like 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th place, that is required to put the other top names together with whatever that golfer is to make a lineup under $50,000 to be an optimal lineup to be in the optimal lineup. Now, the other thing to take with that is how many golfers are in the bucket versus on average. Just like I've been going through with all of the other buckets, you do want to look at those things. Those numbers do go into the projections, by the way, but what you want to look at is the success rate, the frequency rate with just top 10s and optimal lineups. I think you actually have, I do too, but I'm not quite looking at it. You have top 5 frequencies, top 20 frequencies, as well as cut frequencies, so you can look at all that stuff. Look at this. Just one, I could expand it on my side, but you can see it here. You get top 5 frequencies, 1 out of 4. I mean, like a minimum of a 1 from this bucket. Now, of all golfers in this bucket, 10% of them finish inside the top 5. You've got 21 this year. 10% of 21 is 2. So the likelihood we see 2 golfers from that bucket to be inside the top 10. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong bucket. Stupid. Recent form 1s. I got way ahead of myself. Got way too excited. So recent form 1s. Some of you guys are probably like, well, dude, hey, settle down there, sir. Anyways, so it doesn't really work out as well as the last year bucket did, but it's just showing you the last year one is the bucket you really want to look at. Top 5 frequencies. It's obviously a good one to look at. We don't have at least one every single year, so be careful with that. Anyways, enough of this, you know, I wouldn't say so much doomsday, you know, thought process, but recent form 1s, projection is 1 to 4. Recent form 2s, the projection is 1 to 4. Recent form 3s, the projection is 1 to 3, but it's almost 0 to 2. You see that over here? Or it's 0 to 3. Almost 0 to 3. So this is a very risky bucket. We got to keep, let's just look at that one first. Recent form 3s. Because the other ones that we were looking at were 1 to 3, right? 1 to 4. So, recent form 3s. This is close to being 0 to 3 for our projection, but it's technically 1 to 3. Interesting names. Colin Morikawa. Probably not playing him at all. You know what? I'll build one lineup with him, and we'll see who I pair him with. Yeah, I think I play one lineup with him. That'll be a FOMO lineup, and it'll be in a winner take all. And that should be good enough. JT's in this one. So is Jason Day. I do like Jason Day's course fit, but I almost kind of want to fade him, full fade him. DJ, so like, this is already becoming a very volatile bucket to even think about picking a golfer from. These are all volatile golfers. There's not one guy here that I can think of that is just a beacon of consistency. Maybe Jason Day, but no one else. I can't think of anyone else below or above that's like, yep, nope, I want to play that guy. That's crazy. Okay, so to use the same kind of thought process that we did before, there's a 10% success rate of golfers from this bucket. There are 30 golfers in the bucket. So if we want to think like that's 10%, if we use like 10% success rate out of 30, that means 3 have the likelihood to be inside the top 10 just based off of that success rate. I don't think that's the case, but 2's looking pretty good. And I could find 2 golfers I could put in my lineups, especially when you look at the 6K range. Like, look where it starts. We had 17 6K golfers in this bucket. A lot of them we already talked about when it comes to winning. That's one of the trends we saw when it came to 6K golfers at the PGA Championship. They've had a PGA Tour victory, or they go on to have a PGA Tour victory later on, which is obviously impossible to forecast. But, you know, again, Wise has won on tour, Hadwin has won, Hoagie has won, Harmon has won. Peters is not, and I don't think he's going to because he's on Live Tour. Like, I don't think he's going to have a victory in the future. Pendrith, on the other hand, I could see having a victory in the future. Hughes has already won on tour. Molinari, Straka, Svensson, Hardy. Hubbard has not. I don't think he will. Sugg could. Donald has. And the other 3 guys, I don't think so. Maybe Lee Hodges, but that might be a Barracuda Barbasol thing, which obviously that would be our Ches Reeves and our Eric Van Rooyens from previous. So what do we have? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 golfers in the 6K range that we already mentioned in the 6K range before of golfers having won on tour, fitting that trend of 6K golfers who have won on tour being in the optimal lineup or being inside the top 10, which is going to be probably required. So just seeing that from this bucket and not really feeling super comfortable with the rest of the golfers up here makes me want to dip my toes into the 6K range from the recent Form 3 bucket. I might play all these guys single-digit ownership. I don't think I want a lot of exposure to a lot of these golfers. It's crazy, man. Crazy. And I'm cool with that, though, actually. I'm super cool with that. This is actually kind of validating. So I actually have a placeholder lineup that has Cam Davis in it as well as Keith Mitchell, because I kind of like those guys. Could still work out. I mean, those could be my 2 guys, but I really like the 6K range from this bucket. It's by far my favorite 6K range. I mean, we haven't really looked at any of the other ones from the other buckets, but I really like this one. All right, so recent Form 1s, was that 1 to 4 we wanted or 1 to 3? 1 to 4. 1 to 4 for the next 2. So I say we want 1 to 4, but again, it's a projection to be inside the top 10. We might not be able to play, more than 1, depending on the price tags. So keep that in mind. I'm seeing a lot of Rom being in these buckets that I really want to play. And same with Scotty. So Rom and Scotty seem pretty interesting. But there was a bucket that Scheffler was in that wasn't a super highly successful bucket. So now when I think of tiebreakers, if I like these guys kind of the same, I use the buckets. And I think I would rather play Jon Rahm. And again, this is a projection. This bucket is a projection of 1 to 4. I kind of like the idea of starting Rahm and Schauffele. I really like Xander this week. A lot of people do. But, you know, I've already talked about Fowler. I don't mind Fowler. I do like Fleetwood. And I guess that might be it. So maybe I've already figured out what my anchor play is out of this bucket. I think it's Rahm and Schauffele. I think that's fine. I go Rahm, Schauffele. I keep the projections open 1 to 4, and I let the optimizer select any of these other guys. I think that's fine. Cool. Hopefully I remember this when it comes to building lineups. I hope. I should probably just replay it while I'm building lineups. And then the next bucket that was 1 to 4 was recent form 2s, which is really interesting. Like Finau's here. I kind of like Finau this week. A lot of people do, from what I hear, the sentiment online. Probably staying away from Spieth, as most people are. I don't mind Cam Smith. I also don't mind Cam Young. I don't mind. There's a lot of good golfers up here. So if I were to go Rahm in that other bucket, I could literally just go Rahm and that's it. It still would fulfill that 1 to 4 projection, and I could probably pick 2 to 3 golfers from here because I do like Adam Scott, I do like Keegan Bradley, I do like Justin Rose. Hard for me not to play any of those guys, but then when I look up, Victor Hovland I want to play Cam Young, I want to play Tony Finau. So who knows? Maybe I do like 30. Man, do I go all in on Rahm? Off the tee, it looked like you wanted to fade more than you wanted to draw. I mean, Rahm and Scheffler, they both hit fades. And Scheffler was looking really good off the tee at the Byron Nelson. Like, he just couldn't miss. There was some that he did, but, I mean, his swing looks so good. Oof. I know Charlotte Cardin's going to play Sam Burns. This is just going to make you feel like playing Sam Burns, which isn't a terrible choice either. Shoot. You know, that other bucket, yeah, this is difficult too, because then we also have what? Our 6K range is kind of gross, but 7K range is okay. Like the whole 7K range that's here seems pretty decent. I don't know. Hard. 1 to 4. I'll leave you to the other recent form buckets. They're 0 to 2, so, you know, don't play more than 2 golfers from those buckets. Check out the cheat sheet once again. You can follow along with me and make your decisions that way. Now we kind of get into our miscellaneous buckets, I guess, if you want to call them that. We start with salaries. Now, we already kind of covered this in our pass optimal and GPP winning lineups. Salary ones are your 10K range. Normally, when I go through this, we see this projection for the 10K range being like at least 1 to 3. It's a really high success rate, 35%. 5 golfers in it. So even if we did 30% for 5 golfers, we're looking at, you know, 2, 2.5, 3. 2 to 3, and our projection 0 to 2. Sure, I could see it being 0 to 2. Well, actually, let me take that back. So really 30% of 5 is 1.5. So it's really 1.5, 2. So yeah, our projection of 0 to 2 is pretty good, but it's kind of telling you want at least one 10K golfer. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. I'm multiplying this number by this number. So 0 to 2 is a projection, but I think it's a pretty good likelihood at least 1, if not 2, finish inside the top 10 from the 10K range. 1 is our max when it comes to optimal lineups, and it's not always in the optimal lineup, by the way. That's okay. I'm okay with that. When we look at our range of 10K golfers, we've got Rahm, Scotty, McIlroy, Morikawa, and Koepka. I could, yeah, 2 guys from this range being inside the top 10. I think that's, yeah, pretty solid, pretty simple. Rory is in the best bucket, the last year 1 bucket, by the way. Whereas Rahm is in the last year 3 bucket, which isn't a super good bucket to be in. Scotty's in an okay bucket, being in the missed cut bucket for last year. I think it's those 3. You got to choose between those 3. I know a lot of people are going to be on Koepka, and I think Koepka's a good choice because obviously he's a major killer, and you know he really dials down or dials it up at major championships. So the only person I just can't get behind is Morikawa, really. And I think that's fine. I don't mind that. Not playing Morikawa or playing at least just 1 lineup of him, and that's it. That's fine. Rahm, Scheffler, McIlroy, I like. Koepka, I like. I don't mind that. 9K range, 1 to 2. But remember, we want a 2-point buffer, so it's 0 to 2. I think at least 1 would be fine. And I'm really starting to see the 10-9-8 scenario working out really good. So 10-9-8, 7-7-6, or 7-7-7 would be a good choice too. Yeah, 10-9-8, 7-7-6, because also your 8K range is 1 to 2, which again is 0 to 2. Really high success rate here, pretty decent frequency rate. There's a lot of different scenarios that could happen. You could have a 10, 2 9s, 0 8s, and then whatever 7s and 6. You could have 0 10s, a 9, 2 8s, or maybe even 3 8s. Although I don't think 3 8s is going to be the thing. Maybe, definitely could happen. Or 2 9s, 2 8s, maybe a 7 and a 6. Look at that. The high 6K range, by the way, 6.5 and higher. The minimum is 1. Now it's 1 to 2, which obviously, again, you need that 2-point buffer, 0 to 2. But 1 has been inside the top 10 every single year. 1 of the 7K golfers has been inside the optimal lineup every single year. Or I should say 1 7K golfer's always been in the optimal lineup. So it's really, really looking like figuring out, I mean, you want a 7 and a 6 in your lineup, it seems like. I think that's a smart way to go. 7 and a 6. And then you just need to figure out the combination up top. What do you want to do? You want to do 10-9-8? Do you want to do 9-9-8? Do you want to do 9-9-9? 7-7-6? Do you want to do 9-9-8-7-6? There's a lot of combinations you could do, but I'm really liking going 10-9-8 because I don't see a scenario. Oh, I do, but I have a feel like 90%. I want to say there's a 90% chance we're going to see a 10K golfer inside the top 5 or even just win this event. Like for how good Rahm has been playing, how good Scotty Scheffler has been playing, I don't see one of those guys not being inside the top 5. And if that's the case, then you do want to start with the 10. Then I also don't want to discard the 9K range because you get a lot of good golfers in the 9K range, including Xander Schauffele, and Tony Finau. So anyways, yeah, lots of interesting choices here. This screams the 10-9-8-7-7-6 approach so hard. And I think that's what I'm going to do. And then the last bucket to look at are strokes gained buckets. Again, watch the strokes gained explain video in the description of this video. You can find a link to that, I should say. Go watch the strokes gained portion of it because if I explain the full thing here, it'll take 30 minutes. When it comes to strokes gained 1 golfers, this is all strokes gained stats are positive. We have 26 golfers in that field. It's kind of funny. I was looking at this when it comes to the buckets, when it comes to like the totals. it fluctuates a ton. Let's see here. Where are we? Oh, I hid buckets. There we go. So we've got totals here. 26 strokes gained 1 golfers this year. We had 16 last year, but we had 27 the year before that. 21, 22, and then 17. So we've had years, you know, where this all has happened. So I guess if we look at 20 and above, we scroll up to the ones that are 20 and above, which are just really these columns right here. We scroll up to 10s. We had 5 strokes gained 1 golfers inside the top 10. 3, 5. So something to look at. Even when it comes to top 5 finishers, 3, 2, 2. So the projection, 2 to 4. Pretty solid projection, because I think we want at least 2 strokes gained 1 golfers. Here's the great thing about my cheat sheet. You don't even have to do filter, you know, out by ones or anything like that. Sort from A to Z. And you can see all these golfers are color coded. So we want 2 to 4 strokes gained 1 golfers. There's Rahm and Rory. Already talked about it. I want one of those guys in my lineups. I also do want Schauffele in my lineup, and I also want Finau in my lineup. Those are all golfers I want in my lineups. So I gotta make some decisions because that's difficult to make. 2 to 4 being inside the top 10. I could see anchoring around 2 of these guys, whether it's Rahm and Finau, or Rahm and Xander, or maybe it's Rory and Xander, or Rory and Finau, or anyone else that's in this bucket. Maybe we add a third. Again, the projection's 2 to 4. So look at that. There's Ricky Fowler down there. There's Keegan Bradley. Lots of choices. The next bucket's 0 to 2, which is really interesting. We have Brooks Koepka in that bucket, Victor Hovland, Adam Scott. I really like Adam Scott, but I don't think Adam Scott should really be in this bucket. I imagine it's because his around the green stats have to be low. His approach, his calendar year long. It's not season long. It goes back 1 year. My strokes gained stats. He's minus. He's in the minus. But if you're positive off the tee, that's all that matters. So, anyways, interesting. That's not a good sign. Having negative approach. I'm sure he's been positive elsewhere. Like recent form, he might be positive. No, he's negative again. Here's the thing. When you're hitting the ball so well off the tee, having negative approach is going to be kind of common. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Yeah, especially when his peers around him have positive, just as the same. Like Taylor Moore hits the ball off the tee better than he does, and he's got positive approach. That's basically 0, but still. Hovland, 0.5 off the tee, 0.4 approach. Like, geez, I didn't even notice that before. Anyways, 0 to 2 golfers in this bucket. The next one's actually really interesting. The strokes gained 3 bucket, 1 to 4 is the projection to be inside the top 10. 3 is the max projection, like the conservative max projection, but minimum's already 1, so we don't have to drop it down. We've had at least 3 inside the top 10 from this bucket every single year. So when you look at price tags, because I think about price tags right away. If we've seen at least 3 inside the top 10, is there a possibility we see that again this year? And if so, if we don't see the optimal lineup having, you know, that many golfers in it, like when you look at it, we've had up to 4. Wow. 80% success rate. This is something we need to look deeper into. So I am once again going to hide these columns, or these rows, I should say, and focus so here's our strokes gained 3 for optimal lineups. We had 0 in 2021. Coincidentally, we also had the least amount of golfers we've seen in that bucket any year that I've tracked it. So there's 27 that year. We also saw another year where there was 28, and we only had 2 golfers from that bucket in the optimal lineup. However, when it's more than 20, 39, 34, 31, we have respectively 3, 4, 4 in the optimal lineup, and we have 37 this year. Wow. I guess if we look at top 10s are pretty consistent. How do we have 1? I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong bucket. This is the bucket we need to look at. Okay, that's insane. So Team No Putt is kind of what you want to look for when building lineups this week, apparently. Okay. This is insane. Let's see, 2022. Who are our strokes gained 3 guys? Will Zalatoris, Mito Pereira, Chris Kirk. 2 6K golfers and an 8K golfer. 7 and a 6. They were not in the optimal lineup, but they're inside the top 10. Okay, that was 2022. 2021. Your strokes gained 3 golfers were Shane Lowry, Zalatoris again, Scotty Scheffler, by the way, Colin Morikawa. Scheffler, Morikawa, and Zalatoris were not in the optimal lineup, by the way. Neither was Shane Lowry. Is this the year we had 0? 2021? 2021 was the year we had 0. That represented the optimal lineup from the anchor, or from the strokes gained 3 buckets. Let's see here. When it comes to optimal lineups, this is how we determine what's a strokes gained 3. We look at off the tee and negative putting. Off the tee, negative putting. Off the tee, negative putting. Off the tee, negative putting. There you go. We have 4 strokes gained 3 golfers right here at the top. I imagine those are going to be our guys we want to look at. And I guess we have 1 more right. 2 more. These are also strokes gained 3 golfers. Okay, let's see. Are any of those guys optimal lineup guys? Scheffler once again, $7,300. He was an optimal lineup guy. And then Casey, Dustin Johnson, and Morikawa were also. This was TPC Harding Park. So nothing more than a $9,000 golfer, by the way. And just to kind of, myself, I'm like, okay, well, let's look at the 10K golfers that could have been strokes gained 3 guys. I was looking at strokes gained 1. Looks like this guy was a strokes gained 3. The only guy I see with negative putting up top. So when it comes in $10,000 golfers, Brooks Koepka was the only guy back in 2020, and he finished 29th place. This is our result. A little messier back then, but still can figure it out. He's really the only guy that was strokes gained 3. DJ was as well. Obviously, he was part of the optimal lineup. So too was Colin Morikawa. Victor Hovland was, but he was not in the optimal lineup, but Jason Day was. So interesting there. No 10K golfers that were strokes gained 3 golfers in the optimal in 2020, 2019. Let's hide some of this information. We don't need this. Probably don't need that either. Okay. So let me put a filter on this and just look at our salaries top to bottom. So putting, do we have anyone that was negative? Nobody. Everybody had positive putting up top. That's crazy. Matsuyama was a negative putter, and so too was Paul Casey. But yeah, it doesn't look like there were a lot of negative putters. I don't know. That doesn't seem right. I mean, like Brooks Koepka would have been really close to strokes gained three golfer. Like his putting was pretty close to being under. Like he's obviously over. He's almost at 0.1. He was close. That's about it. Trying to like figure out like how close these guys were to try to compare this year. And then in 2018, let's actually go salaries top to bottom. We have a negative putter in Jordan Spieth, believe it or not. He finished 12th. Brooks Koepka won it. He was a negative putter. So he's a strokes gained 3 guy. Okay. I think that's enough to... Not many 10K golfers are in the optimal... no 10K golfers that were in the strokes gained 3 bucket are in the optimal lineup any single year. Like Brooks Koepka was that 1 year, but he was positive putting, but barely. So I don't know. That doesn't really do enough to sway me off of like someone like Scottie Scheffler, but I'm not touching Colin Morikawa. I don't care. Instead, I think it makes this range pretty live. The 9 and the 8Ks were where it was at when it came to strokes gained 3 golfers. So if you're a superstitious type and you think that has any correlation to success, JT, Cam Young, Dustin Johnson, Shane Lowry, those all seem like okay plays. Decisions, man, decisions. Like $9,200 Cam Young. If we think about who we want to build lineups around, like we wanted to go Rahm or Scheffler, which I don't think we go Scheffler if we go with Young. If you wanted to go Rahm or even McIlroy, if you went with Cameron Young, you would have to skip out on Tony Finau and Xander Schauffele, who seem like good plays, or you don't play Rahm, you don't play McIlroy, but you start with Xander, and then you start with Finau, and then you also add Cam Young. And then you do 776. 999-776. I have to build one of those lineups. Have to. Maybe I build like 4 or 5 of them. I like them too much. Oh, all right. So anyways, projection for this bucket, 1 to 4. So 1 to 4. How many you can fit in your lineup? I don't know. I don't know how many will fit in the optimal lineup, but I feel like at least one of these guys here, 8,300 and above, pretty good shot, pretty good choice. And then you can fill in these guys with like glue pieces. Oof. Strokes gained 4. The rest of the buckets are 0 to 2. So I'll leave you at that. You can see Cam Smith was one of them. Hideki Matsuyama. No one really in the strokes gained 5 worth playing. Even Webb. I wouldn't even waste your time. And then here you go. Here's your PGA members. There's 15 of them here. I believe Wyatt is another one. I think Ben Kern is another. Alex Beach is one. Michael Block is another. I imagine Colin Inglis is. That's probably it, right? Yeah, so 20. So 20 PGA members. That sounds about right. Okay. So anyways, that wraps up the stroke chain stats. That wraps up the bucket system for the AT&T Byron Nelson. Oh, Jesus Christ. Cut that out. That wraps it up for the 2023 PGA Championship. So I've got nothing else. I will put a strategy video out once I get, let's go here. I'll put a strategy show out when the tee times come out, and I will provide the marquee tee times with that, but unfortunately won't be able to go live. And I'm hoping to get that video out early tomorrow. So it really depends on the PGA Championship and how they're going to get that information. Like when are they going to get that information out? Is it going to be early in the day? If it is, wonderful, because then I'll be able to update it right away. If not, you might not have a strategy video until Wednesday, which I don't want to think about. Maybe I can break free, because like I said, I'll be on a deployment call all night tomorrow from like 7 to midnight. It's an all hands on deck thing, and we've got a lot of stuff we're deploying to production. So unfortunately, I can't really get out of that, even if I wanted to, or even if I tried. If I did, I'd be a terrible team member. So can't really do that, despite this being a major championship week. So look out for the strategy video, hopefully again tomorrow, if not Wednesday. By the way, if you'd like me to do a live chat Wednesday, let me know what time works best for you down in the comment section. That'll also act as a way to give you an entry into the weekly and monthly giveaway that you see on the screen. I ran a giveaway earlier tonight. $5 went to Joanne, so congratulations, Joanne. Any of you that want a chance to win $5, you just gotta participate on the channel. And also a reminder, Prize Picks. If you're not signed up on Prize Picks, you can check out the link in the description. It'll send you straight to the sign up. It'll send you to the homepage. Once you click sign up, the Sweet Spot promo code will already be populated. If you put at least $20 in your account, I'm gonna give you $20 back. Plus Prize Picks will match your deposit up to $100. And then the cheat sheet was available for you to follow. Again, there's a link for that in the description. And tomorrow I will have an optimizer ready. If you want access to that, be subscribed, comment on any of the videos I put out there, and then email me at sweetspotdfs@gmail.com, letting me know you are interested in the optimizer. And that's all that I have. So with that being said, thank you for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.